All right, we're rolling. Thanks a lot for joining, Michael.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So my lady was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, Michael Holt. He goes on Instagram. He goes by Savage and Saint." And she goes, "Oh, no, we like each other." I don't know if you want to jump off of that because I want to hear about what you're doing and everything. But I think your name, it's quite a lot about your philosophy.
Yeah, for me, it's more than just an Instagram handle. It's really it's a philosophy, a way of life, a way of teaching that I find has been my life's path, and it's a model that I like to bring into the men's workshops that I teach, and it's about really it's about integrating the very natural inborn savage that we're all born with, but the problem is there's not a lot of opportunity in the modern era to express that part of ourselves in a healthy way. But if we don't express that part of ourselves, it comes out anyway, oftentimes unskillfully. And the saint aspect is it's the practice of sitting still, of understanding yourself at the deepest levels, of generating positive states of mind such that it feels good to be you and it feels good for other people to be around you. Now, it's my personal opinion that a man can go too far in either direction. You can cultivate savagery such that you're too hard, you're insensitive, you can't feel. And the opposite is also true. You can become such a heart open, saintly person that the people in your life can't feel your spine, they can't feel your backbone, they can't feel your power. So actually, some savagery serves. It serves, and that's really my philosophy. Is we cultivate these areas of our expression so that we can be of service in the world, so that we can meet the moment and allow the moment to dictate which version of ourselves manifests, so that we can spread love, really.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, and I think it's solid. I mean, as part of my practice, I try to look at what are the polarities, and I want to grow in all directions.
Yeah.
But I mean, what you're talking about is also it's it's the warrior sage in many ways, and it's like, I mean, it's not a new concept by any means, but it's not a widespread understood or adapted practice, certainly not here in the States.
Sure.
And I respect it a lot, and I find it to be very true what you're saying, that we have to have the capacity to go in different directions in order to go to different extremes in order to actually be able to respond to what's appropriate in the moment. Otherwise, our own gets in the way, and our own personality barriers get in the way.
Totally. And you're 100% right. It's nothing new. It is, however, new to me.
Right.
I've never lived this life before, so I've never stumbled upon this. So it's brand new to me, and I want to share it with as many people as I can. And you're right. We have to go. That a big part of the practice is going to the extremes. Go to the absolute extreme expression of your savagery. Go to the absolute extreme expression of your heart open tenderness, and then find that little central point between the two and make that home base. Build a life right there in the middle.
Yeah, man.
So that when that moment comes, you can meet it with exactly what is being asked of.
Yeah. I had a teacher that used to say, everybody has an animal inside, and most people keep it locked in a cage. And fear about what it'll do if it ever gets out. And if it does get out, it wreaks havoc. And his perspective was, part of the practice is we take the animal out of the cage, we go for a run, we let it play. Back in the cage, it's happy, it takes a nap.
Exactly, man. You got to take that pit bull to the park.
Yeah,
every day.
Totally.
I'll tell you a story. I was sitting right here at this desk a couple months ago, and I heard some kids screaming outside my window. And so I popped up. I was kind of frozen for a second because, these kids, it wasn't kids yelling, it was kids screaming in terror. So it was a certain kind of what the fuck. So I got up, I paused for a second, I didn't know what to do. I went over here to my chest here where I have all my collie equipment. I grabbed the collie stick. I went outside, and I found a guy being attacked by someone who was in the midst of what seemed to be a psychological episode. And he was being attacked in front of his children. And I just ran in there with my stick. I didn't have a shirt on. I was screaming bloody murder from the top of my lungs. I never swung my stick. I didn't have to. I didn't have to hit him. Just manifesting that was enough. But if you don't go there at any point in your life, then that's not going to be there for you when you need it.
Right.
But because I train, and because I'm familiar with that energy, I called upon it, and it was enough. No one had to get hurt. I was able to prevent someone from getting hurt. I didn't have to hurt. I didn't have to bring more violence to the situation. The guy just ran away. That was it.
It's awesome.
So that's an example of savagery service.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love that.
So that situation, what if I just kind of tiptoed out there and said, "Oh, hey, excuse me, sir. Please be peaceful. Please be peaceful." Doesn't work, you know? So sometimes savagery is called for.
Yeah. 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 And the power that comes through you with the clarity of intent and the decision. I mean, you went out there prepared to do whatever you had to do. And thankfully it was just to set a clear boundary, you know, to let them know that they didn't want to go further.
Sure.
But part of why that was effective was because your intent was clear, you know, and that takes practice. And to hold that rush of energy that comes through you, you know, that's terrifying, you know, or it can be, you know, to be able to be comfortable with that and still, you know, hold your intent clearly.
Right. And still be there, you know, still be there, still be present.
Right.
Just go out there, psycho, swinging my stick. No, I didn't. There was a moment where I looked the guy right in the eye and I was thinking, I could hit this guy, but do I have to? I don't have to. What's done is done. I wanted him to stop hurting this guy. He's done that. That's it. Nothing more need to go any further. So just like the yin-yang symbol that I know you're familiar with, the Tai Chi symbol, the saint is hiding in the savage is hiding in the saint. And they inform each other constantly. You know?
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear. You think it's obviously clear to you. And, you know, I think for a lot of people, it's paradoxical, you know. But what's interesting it was my mother actually that clued me in on it when I first got into, I'd done kickboxing and taekwondo, mostly taekwondo growing up, and then switched over to Shaolin and just got really fascinated with the whole story and about the monks, you know, and just that aspect of it, as well as the movement was one thing for sure, but the whole story behind it really hooked me. And you know, there's a little bit more nuance. I had a little bit of a romanticization of it, but they were Buddhist monks that dedicated their lives to martial training. You know, and in that there was a little bit of a paradox, and I was like, you know, because they're sworn pacifists, although the reality is a little more nuanced than that. But as a Buddhist monk, you're a pacifist. You're not out starting trouble.
Sure.
You know, defending life is a different story. And I was like, how could they be sworn pacifists and still be, you know, such expert martial artists and you know, and fighters? And my mom was like, that's how they remain pacifists, you know. And it's like, oh, you know, to be skilled enough that nobody wants to test you.
Sure.
That includes when you set a boundary or say your word.
Totally. And I think also you're skilled enough that you know exactly what you're capable of, and you don't want to hurt anybody.
Right.
You know, because you know, like for me, when I first started with martial art, spirituality had nothing to do with it. Nothing. I was motivated to train through my own fear and insecurity, which I think is true for most martial artists. The deeper part of the arts come later, but what gets your foot in the door, what got my foot in the door was, I want to be the baddest ass dude in the room. That's it, you know, and that's not a very noble motivator, but that's what it was for me. And I think if we're being honest, that's what it is for a lot of guys, a lot of people. But to gain any skill in martial art is a very humbling process, because you have to get your ass kicked many times, by superior students, by superior teachers. First of all, you have to just make peace with looking like a complete moron first couple of weeks or months of training, because you have no idea what you're doing. So that's a humbling experience. So by the time you gain any skill, you've been humbled. You no longer need to prove anything to anyone. You know what you can do. That's enough. And so that comes with a burden of responsibility that you don't, that thing, I'll speak for myself personally, that thing that was in me that got me in the door, it's not in me anymore. It was taken from me by the martial path.
Nice.
So the paradox of the martial artist is the greater your capacity in violence, the more skill you have in violence. Somehow, the more peaceful you become.
It's true.
You don't have to prove anything to anyone anymore.
It's true. I've found that to be true in my life and with others that I know,
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, back to your story, you were able to stand right in front of a man and keep restraint, a man who had been doing violence, and you still kept restraint way past the point where most people would have been consumed with either fear or the need to do action, the need to do action. We're able to stay calm at a much farther barrier. Most people's fear and protection would have triggered, or fear and run would have triggered long before that.
Sure.
The decision when you ran out the door to kick his ass, you made a decision. You were still deciding whether or not to kick his ass until he didn't need to. And most people made some decision long before that. And that's a reflection on layers of fear that you've worked through.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And to be clear, I didn't make any decisions when I ran out the door. I didn't even know what I was running out into.
Right.
It wasn't until I saw him. And then, I was never really pissed at the guy, or I put on this mask of a Viking warrior screaming, but that was just what the situation demanded. There was a part of me that was unaffected by the whole thing.
Right.
Then we had that moment where my stick was cocked and I'm looking at him right in the eye, and it was a very heavy moment, but we were both in that moment together. And I think you make a good point. I held the gravity of that moment without needing to crack him or run away. Just right. Here we are. This is what's happening right now. What's next?
Yeah, and my point is that would have been so much more difficult to hold with equanimity if you didn't trust your skill, if you didn't trust that you were still going to be able to respond however was appropriate, even at that point.
Sure.
Sure. I think that's it's interesting watching the fear leave people's body as they train.
Totally.
As I've been working with some beginners recently, and it's been really interesting watching. I can say the words all I want, but it's not till their body is no longer scared that they can really relax.
Right. Relax, and then you see some fluidity emerge, and some spontaneous expression of the skills that they've been developing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the beauty, man. That's the beauty of the training, and even of sparring. You realize that I have a few students too, and their goal is not to be great martial artists. My goal working with some of these men is to use martial art movements and some martial art drills and martial art philosophy to help them in other areas of their life. So just for example, we'll do some light sparring, and I might just tap a guy on the nose, and I see part of them come alive. It's like, I just got punched in the face, and I'm still alive. And then they'll throw a punch back at me, and it's like a part of them that has been sleeping for a long time is now awake.
Right.
And they can bring the metaphors of the training into their relationship with their partner, with their children, with work, with themselves. I mean, the martial art metaphors are endless.
Yeah. Yeah. and they're still true. They're true, you know. And that's, you know, I'm right there with you as far as the attitude, you know. I mean, to me, you know, training martial arts is about being a better human. It's not about, I mean, fighting's part of it, and that's the format, but that's not what it's really about.
No, not at all.
You know?
And for me, like I said, my motivator in martial art was just because I was insecure, because I was afraid of people, because I came from a very blue collar upbringing where scrapping was just part of, you know, the weekend experience. And so I just wanted to be a good fighter. I wanted to be a tough guy. And like I said, that gets sucked out of you somewhere along the journey. I'd also picked up meditation and became a pretty diligent meditator. And I came face to face with, I was finally able to feel the actual reasons why I was interested in martial art, and feel them and sit with them and feel them fully and release them. But then I was left in a position where I was like, man, I don't really even want to train anymore. It's like my goal in martial art was to be able to defend myself very well. And I do that now. So why do I want to keep doing this? And I'll see some of the older guys at my gym who have been training for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And I'm just thinking, like, why do you keep going? I don't understand. I don't care about this anymore. And so I stopped training for like a year, maybe 2 years. And I focused more on meditation and fitness and getting my mind right. I found Tai Chi there, and Tai Chi felt really cool. It was a very soft expression. But now I've kind of come full circle back to more combative martial art, and I have a new motivator there. You know, it's not about self-defense. It's not about hurting people. It's not about being a tough guy. It's just about moving my body. It's just about cultivating an intelligent body and training myself with new drills and new skills, and hanging out with my friends who also train, and then sharing what I've learned with other people who I think might benefit. So it all comes back to service. If the motivator is being of service, then the path will take you all the way until your deathbed. If the motivator is self-defense, 4 years, 5 years, you're good.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to find another reason. That's what I had to do.
I like that. Talk to me a little bit about how that service shows up. I mean, you said you're working with people, teaching them martial arts and stuff, but I know you reach a little bit farther outside of that as well.
Well, yeah, you know, I have the Alpha Tribe, the men's work community that I've established, and I use martial art drills and concepts and philosophy in the workshops and in my work with individuals, like I said, to help them find that abandoned part of themselves, which is what I would call the savage. To wake that part of you up, to find it in your body, whether it's just swinging a stick, angle 1, angle 2, or a knife or a jab cross or whatever, but to find that part of you that you've abandoned because society, you know, allowed for us to abandon it. But then in that part of you, invite it back to the party, you know, invite it back to the table. You deserve to be here, and then invite that part into your life, like I said, into your relationship, into your work, into your maybe into your family life, into your friendships. And how does it show up skillfully? Well, maybe asking for more money, maybe setting a firm boundary, maybe looking a dear friend in the eye and telling them some hard truth that he needs to hear about himself. You know?
Yeah.
When I teach these things in the workshop, like I said, I'll bring knives in and we'll do some knife techniques, but I'm not suggesting that these guys get knives and go around swinging them in the streets. You know, it's a metaphor. So in that way, this is how you invite the abandoned savage back into your heart and use it to serve your life and the lives of the people around you, so that people feel safe around you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a gift. It's a gift.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in there. You know, one, just fundamentally what you're talking about of you know, those kind of denied parts of ourselves, and the you know, the some of the deeper and older parts of ourselves that maybe don't have a place in society, and I think that's not just violence. It's any form of passion, really. You know, is terrifying to the structure of society for good reason. You know, it's hard to live in tight quarters with other people if everyone's fully expressing themselves all the time. You know.
Sure.
Yeah. But, you know, you certainly know as well as I, and I think most people just, you know, the consequences of denying that part or repressing it or feeling ashamed of it, you know, those will kill us.
Sure, man. Yeah, I forget. I recently read this somewhere. I forget where, and it may even have come from you. But it was about the taboo on full expression or the taboo of ecstasy in our society. And the author said, I forget where I read it. But
I don't think it was me.
The author said, if you don't think there's a taboo against ecstasy or ecstatic bliss or full expression, think of the last person you saw someone in full ecstatic expression in public. And what did society tend to think of that person in that moment? Probably that they were loopy or nuts. You know? Yeah. So that's a big part of the workshops too, is just inviting whatever you're feeling to play it all the way out, to play it all the way through you, because the issues are in the tissues. Like you said, when you're working with your students and you start to see the fear leave their body, it's in your body. Yeah. And you have to move it out of your body. Otherwise it stays with you. You know, emotion is physical. It's a physical sensation. And we have to move it through and out of us. And then when we do that, when we give ourselves permission to just, then we find our body, we're more sensitive in our body. There's more information available to us. We feel freer, lighter, less pain. The issues are in the tissues. It's basic. That's another reason why martial art is such a beautiful practice, because you're just moving. Just move. You know, move your body. Now, I've always been of the opinion that if you're going to adopt a movement practice, and movement is the foundation of health, why not pick martial art? Because the side effect of that movement practice is that you learn how to defend yourself skillfully and become a competent fighter. So for me, it's like, yeah, you can dance, sure. You can do yoga, sure. But I'm drawn to martial art because side effect of that movement is capacity and violence. And that for whatever reason, that's important to me.
Yeah. Well, and it also, like you said, it's inherent to the methodology of learning martial arts is confronting your own fears. Mm-hmm. And that's not the only place that's true, but you're not going to get very far if you're not constantly confronting your own fears. And at a certain point, that stops being a reluctance and it starts being part of the drive, is totally. To seek out your fears and to confront them. Totally. And that's a different level of things.
Yeah. That you could say is the difference between a life well lived and a mediocre life. We talk about this in the curriculum of Alpha Tribe. It's the fear compass. And there has to be a reorientation around that such that you start to move in the direction of what's terrifying you rather than hold it at arm's length. Because on the other side of that fear, on the other side of your leaning into that fear, is a more fully expressed, competent version of yourself. But you have to go through that fear to meet that part of yourself. And then you got to find the next one. And that's an inquiry that never stops.
Yeah.
That's a dedication of oneself and one life to constantly be living on the edge of what's terrifying you. You don't want to go too far into it so that you just have a meltdown, but to live so far away from it that everything is comfortable all the time.
Yeah.
Not fulfilling.
Yeah, the only way to expand the comfort zone is to get more comfortable with discomfort. You know? Totally. And certainly other ways, nature can provide a lot of that. I've never been in a squirrel suit. I'm sure I would jump to another level if I got comfortable in a squirrel suit. Maybe it'll happen this time around or not.
What's a squirrel suit?
Those flying squirrel suits, man, that people do like base jumping in.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't always need to be an adrenaline dump kind of thing. Jump out of an airplane or fight a bull. It could be have a conversation with your dad.
Yeah.
It could be take a dance class. Yeah. It could be
more importantly.
Yeah. It could be sit still for 20 minutes every morning.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. Oh, one thing too about I mean, just for me, as far as why I continue with martial arts, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but you know, I was talking with one of my training partners recently, and I mean, it's like, shoot, they've shown how powerfully playing the piano can counteract Parkinson's, because it's two hands doing two different things, and it's complex. I mean, good Lord, I mean, the complexity involved in, say, sparring, even sparring, you know, where with low risk of injury, just the complexity going on in your nervous system is, there aren't many parallels. There really, it's such a full body, instantaneous, complex phenomenon, you know, that I know I'm smarter when I train frequently. You know, I know I think better and I react better.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, man. I look at my teacher, Dan Inosanto. He's I think he's in his mid 80s now, and he bops around the room like he's, you know, he's smart as a whip. I watch him. He teaches the children's classes before the adults classes. He knows all the kids' names.
Nice.
Moving around, demonstrating techniques, and it's because he moves every single day.
Yeah.
Past fucking 50 years.
Yeah.
When I first started training, like I said, my mentality was a lot different, and I just gravitated right toward Muay Thai kickboxing because it was just brutal, man. Elbows, knees, kicks, punches, screaming on the heavy bag. There was something in my body, and Muay Thai was the teacher, the shaman that was going to exercise me. You know, in retrospect, I can see that. And then I would also train Kali, but I kind of hated Kali. I was like, part of me was always like, why am I even doing this? The double stick art, you know, we do what's called Sinawali, where you do a pattern with someone else. And in my head, I'm thinking, when am I ever going to have two sticks on me, encounter another individual that has two sticks on him and battle, you know? Because my mentality was, this is only about self-defense and only about fighting. But now I can look back and see, like you just said, your right brain and left brain is talking to each other. Your right arm is doing one thing, your left arm is doing another. Now you're incorporating the footwork. It's a flow state.
Yeah.
It's a state of mind from which creativity eventually starts to spring. So it's keeping yourself young and able so that we're not afflicted by Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, all that stuff later in life, so we can age gracefully because we take care of ourselves now through this practice. I have a friend who's studying at UCLA. He's hooked up with the neuroscience department, and they're doing studies on the cognitive effects of martial art training, specifically Kali.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he would be a great guy for you to talk to, actually. I can link you guys up, but he has a company called Cognitive Kali, where he's teaching Filipino martial art to people who don't care about martial art, but they care about anti-aging, they care about flow state, they care about creativity. So it's really exciting.
Oh, that's brilliant. I would love to talk to him. That makes so much sense. And I do think any of the martial arts I think would be beneficial, but there is something about the Kali and the almost mathematical nature of doing the Sinawali drills I think is probably specifically well suited for that type of
Totally. And what I found, like we were saying earlier, you know, that fear is in your body, whatever emotion is in your body. I find that when I practice with my sticks, it feels to me very regal and dignified. I feel dignity in my body when I'm moving it that way. You know, it feels like very strong but graceful.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't find that expression in your body, then it's just an idea. If you can't embody dignity, then it doesn't really exist. So for me, playing with the stick and the knife, it helped me find dignity inside of myself.
I like that. And what you mentioned there, and you touched on earlier too, just kind of the physical as a metaphor, and also as like the training ground for like saying to embody dignity. Well, yeah, you're going to be a lot easier to carry that attitude through your life, you know, and something about just the physical practice in general. Maybe particularly martial arts, but just that embodiment of different states, you know. I always hesitate with the word shamanic, but sometimes it's maybe close enough of just that embodying different ways of being, like the savage and the saints.
Totally.
Um,
Totally. I have no problem. I have no qualms with the word shamanic, because to me it just means the capacity to be a bit of a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
To not cling so tightly to one's self-identity, but to allow the moment to shape which version of you manifests.
Yeah, shape shifting is exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. And the emotional states and the physical states, and even even the qualities of movement, or like the different animal systems, and often it's like the same movements you'll see somewhere else with just a different attitude, and on the one hand, from a purely martial perspective, there's a lot of maybe extraneous effort. I mean, it's not really required to learn to move in all these different ways if you just want to learn how to fight. But there is something about embodying those different states that opens up other doors, our body and our mind and our attitude. And it helps us get past ourselves, like you're saying,
Yeah, I think maybe that practice of embodying different states kind of reorients you to the state of self that you call home base, and where once it may have felt like such a permanent thing, the grip of self get a little more loose, and then the question becomes, well, what am I? And that's a good place to be, I think. Having this mystery of, well, I don't really know what I am. I don't really know what any of this is. And then when you start asking those kind of questions, the only thing that makes sense is to just sit still. Just sit still. There's nothing else you can do. Because that's where the answers to those kind of questions come. And they don't come in words. They come in feelings, vibrations, and insight. So that's the way that I see the savage and the saint path really being intertwined. Because the practice of saintliness, as I see it, is the practice of sitting still. You can call that meditation if you want, or prayer, or whatever. But just sitting.
Nice.
So what I love to do in the workshops too is, like I said, I'll bring training daggers and knives, and I'll show some techniques for knife defense or knife fighting, and I'll get the vibe of the whole room is all amped up. We'll move and we'll beat our chests, and then right from there go into a meditation practice of what the Buddhists call metta, loving kindness, of cultivating metta, M-E-T-T-A. It's a Pali word for loving kindness. So it's cultivating a mind state of loving kindness, and you offer that to yourself. You offer that to all beings. You offer that to a difficult person, to a beloved person, to a neutral person. And then between those two practices, you find that center point. You say, okay. And it's a feeling. I mean, it's a feeling. If I was to ask somebody to fully embody savagery, it's not the kind of embodiment that you would want to hold all the time, because it's tight, tense. Your lip snarls up, shoulders roll forward. If I was to ask somebody to fully embody saintliness, it's heart open, the gaze is soft, you may even tear up. It's a difficult posture to hold for an entire life. I'm not called to hold that for my entire life. Some people are, God bless them. But if you marry the two totally, there's this simultaneous strength and softness, this simultaneous grace and power. And such that you walk into a room and it feels like medicine for people. It's strong, it's trustable, it's kind, and it's capable. And it takes, like anything else, it takes practice. But we're always practicing something, We're always practicing something. We're always getting better at something. The problem is we don't always know that we're getting better at something that's afflictive for us and for the world at large. So it's just a reorientation to the moment. Okay. This moment is an opportunity to practice. What do I want to practice? And you can practice just by your depth of your breath, just by your gaze, just by your stride. And I really do believe that you can uplift a room by the way that you are. You don't have to say it to anybody. And what if everyone took that responsibility upon themselves?
Can you say that again? Some cut out. You can uplift a room.
Yeah, I said I really believe you can uplift a room, you can uplift a space just by the way that you are, just by the depth of your breath, just by the stillness of your mind.
Yes.
You can uplift the vibration of it. You can make people feel better without having to say anything. And you're affecting the way that they feel at a level that they may not even be sensitive enough to feel, but that doesn't matter. And now imagine if everyone took that responsibility upon themselves.
Yeah, man.
But all we can do is take that responsibility for our own body and mind. And maybe if we really do it, we'll inspire some other people to do the same.
It's true. There's people, you know, I mean, you know, the type where, you know, they may be skilled fighters, but it's like they call violence to them or they're looking for it, you know, and then there's the people that are quite capable and they walk into a room and everybody just relaxes a little bit because now they feel safer.
Totally.
That's how you want to be in community, you know. You want that everybody feels safer around.
Yeah. They feel safe because of your kind, loving heart and because you have the capacity to do damage if that's what's called for. You know? That's beautiful.
Yeah, your story reminds me of one time when a friend of mine had a bit of a psychotic break. I don't know if that's the right word. He was having some kind of episode, and he got nose to nose with me, and just spitting in my face, angry, yelling at the top of his lungs, you know. But I knew he wasn't angry at me. He was just really, really angry.
Yeah.
And it's like he was looking for an excuse to want to take it out on me, to vent the anger. And because I knew I could at least take one punch, if you know, maybe more, but I knew at least one punch from him wasn't going to lay me out. So I stood there as calm as I could possibly be and just talked to him. Yo, it's me. You remember who you're talking to right now? It's me. You know, he didn't really want to hurt me, but he would go off the rails on occasion. And it was one of these moments that it just struck me that it was like, because I was okay with knowing that he might hit me once or twice and I'd still be okay with that. You know, that I could stand there and de-escalate what seemed to be impending violence, you know. I was glad I did, because he wouldn't have wanted to hurt me in the morning, and I didn't really want to hurt him if I didn't have to, you know. And,
sure.
And just that willingness of, you know, those barriers of fear.
Yeah. And that calm demeanor that you were able to hold in a very volatile situation, you can't fake that.
Right.
You can't just will yourself to do that. It has to be backed by actual competency.
Yeah.
And when it is, in my experience, I worked at nightclub security for 10 years. And I found myself in situations like that with someone who's very aggressive and intoxicated in front of me, yelling at me. I would never let anyone get nose to nose with me, but, you know, in my space more or less. But I found toward the end of my career as a doorman, because I eventually just had to get out of that line of work because it didn't suit my lifestyle anymore. But I found my favorite part of that job was those moments like that where I was able to just really remain very, very calm. And I found that the level of calm was more destabilizing to that person than anything I could have said or done. Or, you know, they're beating their chest like a gorilla, but I'm just not even reacting. And then I just watched them start to shift a little bit, like, wait a minute, what does this guy know that I don't know? And now they're starting to back up, but they're still insulting me and pointing their finger. But we both know what actually happened here. We had a conversation at a much deeper level, and you decided that you want to walk away. So they could say whatever they wanted to about me, but the point of the story was they left. I didn't have to put my hands on them, and it was only because I was able to stay calm. But like I said, you can't fake that.
No, and it speaks to experience.
Yeah.
It's it is such a funny double-edged thing, you know, about gaining power. I mean, as a word for what we're talking about, because it is power, and it brings us to a full expression of the self. And You know, and it's like, you know, think about in the past, you know, how often, you know, warrior codes could be incredibly strict. But there's a damn good reason, you know, that there's a code, you know, that we're going to turn you into somebody with that capacity for violence. I need you to follow these rules, you know?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are, you know, looking for that code. And I think that makes us, I know for me, it makes me feel more okay about just about the clarity of my decisions and when it's appropriate to act or not act, you know,
Totally.
is to have just you know, a solid pillar that I can rely on and kind of check myself, you know, are these are my values, am I in alignment with my values, you know?
Totally. Yeah, I think for me, I found that code between martial arts and traditional Buddhist meditation. That code just kind of presented itself,
Yep.
and it's become, you know, my life's passion. Um, Developing as a meditator on the path of classical enlightenment, and developing as a martial artist. Those are the two checklists for my day. If I can check both those boxes, good. It's been a good day.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been in the process of pairing myself back to fundamentals. Every time I get scattered.
Sure. And I think with regard to developing as a martial artist, it doesn't always need to mean, you know, rounds on the heavy bag or drilling or sparring. It could mean flexibility. It could be the quality of your nutrition. It could be, did you get enough sleep? You know, I think for me, what I've come to realize is the path of the martial artist is the path of health,
Mm-hmm.
of putting your body in a position where it can train and can perform well into your twilight years. So at one point in my life, I maybe had all these different avenues where I wanted to excel. I want to train martial arts. I want to also do yoga. I want to make sure that I'm eating well. I want to make more money. I want blah, blah, blah. I want to meditate, take a retreat. But now I found this space where I can boil all of those things down into one path, one way. So find the common denominator between all your life's endeavors and boil them down to the core. And I think for me, it's like what you said earlier, it's that code. It's that warrior's path.
Yeah.
So that's my guiding principle. That's my guiding light. And it makes things so much more simple. And decisions make themselves.
Right. Right. Yeah, just back to the savage and saint, or just those polarities. I mean, that's how I got into doing body work, was through martial arts, and yeah, something clicked, and I became a little. I had trained for a number of years, but they were basically in sport oriented sparring type. That was kind of the context, and then and then when I got into actually lethal techniques, it shook me a little bit, to be quite honest. You know, which surprised me, because I'd had a background, but you know, we weren't breaking necks. And something in me just said, you know, I don't want to give this path up, but I want to make sure I stay balanced with it, and that's how I got into body work.
Right on.
And you know, just kind of kept going with it from there. But it's been a great pairing for me personally.
Yeah, well, like you said earlier, there's nothing new there.
Right.
The path of the destroyer and the healer. If you know how to break an arm, you know how to mend an arm. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good for you. I think that healing is a high expression of martial art.
I'm at the point now where it took a number of years where I felt like they were two separate things and I wanted them to feed each other. Longer than I had expected for that to bridge, but it definitely did bridge, and it's all studying the body to me, and studying intent. You know, I mean, often the knowledge is the same. Is it applied to heal or is it applied to harm? But it's the shoulder only works this way as the shoulder works. You know, We can help it heal, or we can harm it, you know. But
Yeah.
so it's fun. It's fun to have things in my life that reinforce each other, you know.
Totally, man. I get it.
Yeah.
I remember years ago training at the Anasato Academy, and like you said, when you see a lethal technique, it's kind of a weird feeling. I don't know. And I remember in the class, the teacher showed a technique of cutting the carotid artery, and he said, make sure after you get that cut, put your hand up, because the blood is going to come out of the neck at a very high velocity in your eyes. And I was just like, what? It kind of rocked me a little bit. Like, oh, this is what we're learning. I like it, but it's kind of gross, but I'm pulled toward it. But then at that very next moment, there was a crowd of students in the corner, some high level students, and they were kind of crowded around something that I couldn't see. And as a pack, 3 or 4 students, they all kind of migrated toward the door. And what I learned had happened was someone noticed that there was a bee on the mat, and the bee had a busted wing. And so they wanted to make sure that no one stepped on the bee, so they gracefully carried it outside. I mean, come on, man. And it was like right there, boom, in the moment. I was like, whoa, there's a lot going on here. And I like what I'm learning, you know?
Yeah. Love that. Love that.
It's a powerful moment that I never forgot.
Yeah, that's great. That's also really cool that you train with Dan Anasato. I've not had the pleasure of meeting him personally, but I've trained with a number of his students, and just seems and sounds like one extraordinary individual.
Yeah, he's definitely a role model for sure. Wise elder in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great guy, man. Really great guy.
Yeah, there's not a lot of those old school dudes around, you know, and certainly not people that have trained his capacity, but just that old school mentality, man. And people have been training like that for that long is a different breed.
Yeah, he's probably, you know, now that I think about it, he's probably the greatest example of a savage saint that I could think of. Because he's such a sweet person, kind old man. But what most people don't know is that he's still got it. Mm. He's got some real martial skills, speed and quickness, but he's also the sweetest, gentlest person you've ever met. So just a shining example of a full expression of the martial arts that I'm lucky to have found.
That's great, man. Yeah. And again, you know, it's like, I guarantee that's not a fearful man, you know. That's why he's able to be so sweet, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, some of that's personality and other intentionality behind that for sure, but it's hard to be kind when you're wrapped in fear.
Totally. Damn near impossible.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's one of the pieces where I wish whatever people live their own lives, but I think that's something that if everybody understood that more clearly, the world would be better.
You know? I agree. And I found myself, man, I live here on the beach in Venice, and I found myself in some really interesting conversations with some really interesting people. But I'm able to enter those conversations because I'm not afraid of people. Like, for example, you know, there's a very interesting beach population here in Venice, homeless people. And I've had some really profound dialogues with some of them. But it's only because I'm able to speak to them kindly, because I'm not afraid that they're going to hurt me, because I know what to do if they try. You know? So it's that martial capacity gives you the impetus to go into a situation compassionately and kindly, to connect with human beings. And I've been able to do quite a lot of that. And people who don't have a direct background in training it wouldn't be wise for them to do it, so they don't. But I feel lucky.
Yeah.
My martial art path has emboldened me to connect with people at a really human level.
That's awesome. Awesome. It reminds me of Don Juan in one of Castaneda's books, you know, just repeats, there's nothing to defend and there's nothing to defend against, you know. And to me, that's been one of the aspirations.
Beautiful, man. really beautiful.
There's been points in time where I know that's true. I'm not going to pretend I live there. But
Fleeting. But you've tasted it. That's good for you. Yeah, you and me both, man. You and me both.
Yeah, man. Well, so the group work you've been doing. I mean, I feel like I got a pretty clear idea of what you do with folks.
Yeah. So, but just to be clear, I represent 1/3 of the teachers within Alpha Tribe. So my main area of focus is self-mastery, is movement, is stillness, is health, cultivating health and vitality, well, meditation, movement through martial art, developing a daily practice to stick to. But I have two partners. My one partner, Justin Patrick Pierce, his primary area of expertise is intimacy and using your relationship as a vehicle to awaken. And really bring your all to your relationship, so that's fulfilling. And then the third party, Dave Burns, he calls himself the business monk, and his whole approach is approaching one's life, one's career, one's business as a vehicle to awaken, as a spiritual practice. So I think between those three, we got all the bases covered. So it's not just about martial art in the Alpha Tribe. It's not just about health and fitness. It's about freedom. Our three primary areas of focus: freedom, purpose, and love.
That's a great trinity right there. I like.
Yeah. And so, every guy comes with their own strengths and weaknesses. So you might have one guy who's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but he's broke as a joke, and he's single. I don't know, or maybe his relationship isn't that fulfilling. Or maybe his relationship is great, but he's not making any money. So he's going to gravitate more toward the teachings on business. You might have a guy who's a multi-millionaire, but he's morbidly obese, and he's divorced. So it's not about business for him. He's done that, but he's done it so well that he's out of balance in every other area of his life. So all guys, I think, need work in one of those three areas. And balance those three areas of our life becomes joyful. The moment becomes joyful. You don't need to keep grasping for something extra.
Those are three pretty critical areas.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. So for any listeners there who want to connect, we have the Alpha Tribe. Instagram is alpha.tribe. There's the website. It can be found at wearesacred.org. And then if you just navigate on the tab there, you'll find information about Alpha Tribe. We offer workshops about 4 times a year. And then for guys who are really called into practice, they can, through a monthly subscription, they can join a men's group where they'll be held accountable. They'll be given daily practices that they can use in their life to work on whatever they're wanting to work on. And really the main thing is, like I said, accountability and camaraderie. It's this path of healing, the path of self-development, the path of slaying your own dragons is hard. But to be held by other men who are doing the same it pushes you further than you would go alone. And also it's so liberating to realize that your flaws, your shit isn't that unique. Your struggles are universal struggles. That everyone is doubting their relationship or feeling like they're not giving enough in their career or wanting to do more or give more or be more. I mean, everyone goes through that. So we come together, we admit it, and then we grow together and we become what we could not become alone.
Amen, brother. Amen. Cool, man. I love what you do, and always appreciate your quotes from the Tao Te Ching.
Yeah, man. Can't beat them.
Nah, you really can't.
Can't add anything to it. It's all been said.
Yeah.
Nothing new. Nothing new.
Absolutely timeless. Absolutely timeless. Anything you want mention before we start wrapping it up?
Yeah, just in addition to what I mentioned about the Alpha Tribe, if anyone wants to connect with me, Instagram is probably the best way. Like we said, you can find me at Savage and Saint. And I just want to thank you, man, for let me rap with you. It's been a great conversation, and I have a lot of respect for you as well. And I hope that if you're ever up out here on the West Coast, you let me know, man. We'll go down to the beach, practice some Tai Chi, whatever.
Careful what you wish for, man. I might be there in a couple months.
Bring it. Let me know.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you, my man, and I'm really glad you joined me.
Likewise, my brother. Thank you.
See you soon.